My husband always praised his brilliant female intern. One day, he left his laptop open, and I saw a chat pop up. Last night was amazing, let's do it again after the meeting. My blood ran cold. That afternoon, I walked into his boardroom and greeted the intern with a smile. She looked confused until I placed a stack of screenshots on the table. My husband stammered, "Honey, please." But it was too late, his career and reputation were about to crumble. This is long. I need to let it out. Everything just happened, and my hands are still shaking while I type. I, 38 female, have been married to Daniel, 41 male, for 15 years. We live in Chicago. No kids. I work in HR for a healthcare company, and he's a senior exec at a marketing firm downtown. We weren't a perfect couple, but we had what I thought was a good marriage. We traveled. We laughed. We had goals. We supported each other. I stood by him when he went through a rough patch with his job 4 years ago. I helped him study when he went for his executive certification. I planned surprise getaways. I was proud of our life. Over the last year or so, Daniel got promoted and started managing a bigger team. He was really excited about it. I was happy for him. He came home every night talking about his projects, his team, especially this new intern, Sophia, 24F. She was brilliant, driven, mature beyond her years, fresh perspective, all those buzzwords. At first, I thought nothing of it. Interns can be helpful, and I figured maybe he was just impressed because she worked hard. I asked about her in that supportive wife way. Where's she from? What does she study? I even joked a little. Don't let the intern outshine you, babe. Harmless stuff. But the mentions didn't stop. Over time, it was like she became the center of every work story. If the team did something great, Sophia was behind it. If there was a tough call, Sophia helped him work through it. If he stayed late, it was usually with Sophia. I still didn't jump to conclusions, because he never acted shady. He always kept his phone nearby, sure, but not locked down. He never changed passwords. He still slept next to me, held my hand in public, brought me coffee in bed on weekends. Until last Tuesday. Daniel was working from home because he had a virtual meeting that morning and an in-person board meeting in the afternoon. I had taken the morning off because I wasn't feeling well, migraine, fatigue, just off. Around 10 a.m., he got a call and stepped outside to take it. Left his laptop open on the kitchen counter. I swear I wasn't snooping. I walked by to grab some water when a chat notification popped up in the corner of the screen. Slack. The sender was Sophia M. The message said, "Last night was amazing. Let's do it again after the meeting. I'm still thinking about you." I froze. My mouth went dry. I couldn't move. I just stared at it. I waited for more messages. A few seconds later, she sent a winking emoji. That was it. I opened the chat. My heart felt like it was going to explode. I started scrolling. The messages were there. All of them. Weeks of them. Laughing. Flirting. Planning meetings that weren't real. Late-night brainstorming sessions. And yes, explicit messages. Details about what they'd done, what they wanted to try next. Pictures. From her. From him. I took screenshots of everything. I airdropped them to my phone and emailed them to myself. My hands were shaking, my breathing was shallow, but I was calm. Too calm. I think my brain just switched into some kind of shock mode. When he came back in, I acted like I was still sick. I went upstairs, locked the bathroom, and cried silently on the floor for 40 minutes. Then I stood up, washed my face, and started planning. I knew he had that board meeting at 2 p.m. I knew Sophia would be there. She always attended those meetings to learn, according to him. I got dressed, put on my nicest outfit, nothing flashy, just clean and sharp, and printed out the screenshots. Not all of them, just the ones that mattered. The message from that morning. Some of the most recent exchanges. And one very graphic picture Sophia sent, just to remove any doubt. At 1:45 p.m., I left the house. I showed up at his office, smiled politely at the receptionist, and said I needed to drop something off for Daniel. She buzzed me in. Daniel stood up. "Olivia, what are you doing?" I looked at him like he was a stranger. "You left your laptop open this morning. Thought I'd help out." Sophia's face turned white. Someone on the other side of the table cleared their throat. Another man leaned back in his chair slowly, visibly uncomfortable. Daniel stepped around the table, lowering his voice. "Can we please talk outside?" "Please?" "Oh, now you want privacy?" I said, still loud enough for the whole room to hear. "Like the private nights at her apartment?" He froze. Sophia opened the folder, finally. She glanced at the first page, slammed it shut, and looked down. No one defended her. No one defended him. I turned to the rest of the room. "I'm sorry you all had to see this. But I figured if my marriage was going to fall apart, I might as well let the people who helped build the fantasy watch it come undone." Daniel kept saying my name like it was going to soften me. "Olivia, please." I ignored him. I walked out and left them all sitting in the mess they made. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I just left. And I still don't know what happens next. I'm at my sister's house now. My phone's blowing up. I haven't looked at any of the texts. Not yet. If you made it this far, thank you. I don't know what I'm going to do. But I know this, I'm done playing the fool. I didn't deserve this. And I don't have to clean it up for him. Let them sit with it. I didn't go home that night. I stayed at my sister's condo in Logan Square. She didn't ask questions at first. Just hugged me, handed me wine, and let me sit in silence. Around midnight, I finally told her everything. I showed her the screenshots. Her jaw dropped. She kept whispering, "No way, no way." The next day, I got up early. I hadn't slept. My eyes were swollen. I hadn't heard from Daniel since I walked out of that boardroom. But then around 8 a.m., the calls started. Voicemails. Texts. Emails. From Daniel. From his coworker Marcus. Even from someone in HR at his firm. I ignored all of them until one message hit different. Sophia texted me. Yes, her. The intern. The mistress. The message said, "I didn't know he was still with you. He told me you two were separated. Please call me." I didn't mean for this to happen. I stared at it for a while. Then I called her. I wanted to hear it from her mouth. I wanted to see if she'd lie again. She picked up on the first ring. Her voice was shaky. "Olivia?" "Yeah." "Talk." And she did. She told me Daniel had been flirting with her for months, that it started innocently, whatever that means. Late nights, shared cabs, coffee runs. One day, he told her he was going through a separation. That we lived in the same house but weren't together. That I was cold and bitter. That I didn't support his career. She swore she believed him. But what got me wasn't her voice. It was what she said next. "He told me you were cheating on him." I nearly dropped the phone. "He said you had someone else. That's why he felt free to be with me." I didn't even think to question it. "He said you two agreed not to talk about it at work." That was a twist I didn't see coming. He was painting me as the cheater. To a 24-year-old intern. At his own workplace. And it worked. I hung up without saying much else. I needed time to think. I sat there on the couch in my sister's living room, surrounded by the hum of early morning city noise, feeling like a stranger in my own life. Around noon, I finally answered one of Daniel's calls. He started crying immediately. "Olivia, please, I messed up. I'm so sorry. I'm losing everything." I didn't say anything. He kept talking. "They've suspended me pending investigation. Sophia told HR everything. They're launching a full review." Still, I stayed quiet. "They're dragging my name through the mud," he said, like that was the tragedy here. "Everything I worked for is going to fall apart." I finally spoke. "Good." There was a long silence on the line. Then he said something that made my skin crawl. "Can we talk in person? I have something I need to tell you." "About what?" "Just, please. It's important." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet. I needed closure. Or maybe I just needed to look him in the eye one more time and see what kind of man could lie so easily. We met at a coffee shop near Millennium Park. Neutral ground. Public. He looked like hell. Unshaven. Eyes bloodshot. Tie loose. He didn't even order coffee. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," he started. "It was supposed to be just fun. A distraction." "You lied to her about me," I said. "You told her I was cheating." He sighed. I panicked. "I didn't want to be the bad guy." "You are the bad guy." Then he leaned in, and what he said next hit me like a truck. "There's something else. A few years ago, there was someone else. Before Sophia." I blinked. "What?" I left him sitting there, head in hands, looking like a man who finally saw the cracks forming under his feet. Back at my sister's place, I started putting together everything I'd learned. I talked to a lawyer. I dug through our shared bank accounts, our credit card statements. I made a list of anything strange. And that's when I found another name. A $450 hotel charge in St. Louis, 3 months ago. Daniel told me he was there for a conference. But the charge was on a Friday night, and the conference didn't start until Monday. I called the hotel. No record of a Daniel checked in. But there was a room under the name Ben C. That's his old college friend. Someone he hasn't talked to in years. I called Daniel. "Who's Ben C?" Silence. "Then, what are you doing?" "I'm asking how deep this rabbit hole goes." More silence. "Daniel, were you with someone else in St. Louis?" Click. He hung up. And that's where I'm at now. I haven't told anyone else about the St. Louis charge yet. Not even my sister. I'm scared of how much more I'm going to find. I don't know who my husband really is. I thought he was a man who made a mistake. Now I think he's someone who's been playing a game for years, and I never knew the rules. I'm going to keep digging. I have to know the truth. No matter how ugly it is. That night, after he hung up on me, I sat in the dark with just the hotel receipt on the screen and a notepad beside me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt numb, like I was living someone else's life. I kept asking myself, how long has this been going on? Did I ever really know him? I didn't sleep. The next morning, I woke up to a private message on Facebook. It was from someone I didn't recognize, Marissa D. I clicked on her profile. Early 30s, blonde, works in corporate finance in Atlanta. The message said, "Hi Olivia. You don't know me, but I think we might have something in common. I met Daniel at a conference in 2022. I just found out he was married." I stared at the screen, frozen. I replied, "What do you mean met?" She responded immediately. "We dated for 3 months. He said he was divorced. We only saw each other when he came to Atlanta on business trips. I had no idea he was lying until I saw a post from someone in his firm tagging him and you at a gala last year. I confronted him. He ghosted me. 3 months. While we were still married. While he came home and kissed me and asked me to pick up dry cleaning. I asked for proof. She sent screenshots. Texts. A couple of photos. Nothing inappropriate, but enough to show they had a real relationship. She even sent one of him holding her dog. I recognized the watch on his wrist. I bought it for our 10th anniversary. I thanked her and asked if she'd be willing to write a statement. She agreed. Said she'd wanted closure for a long time too. At this point, my stomach hurt constantly. Like something was rotting inside me. Every hour brought a new blow. But I wasn't done. I kept digging. I remembered something else, an old iPad that used to be his but ended up in the junk drawer in our kitchen. He never used it after upgrading to a newer one 2 years ago. I hadn't thought of it until now. I asked my sister if I could go back to the house and pick it up. She offered to go with me. Daniel wasn't home when we went. His car was gone. The place felt like a crime scene. I couldn't stand to look at the bed. I grabbed the iPad and left. Back at my sister's place, I charged it. It still had his old Apple ID logged in. That's when I found the hidden album in the Photos app. Dozens of pictures. Women. Most looked young. Nothing too graphic, but clearly intimate. Different cities. Different hotel rooms. Dates in the photo data going back at least 5 years. I felt sick. Some of the women were repeated. Some were just one-offs. Then I saw one that made me stop breathing. A photo of Sophia months before he ever told me about her. Not from work. She was wearing casual clothes, sitting on what looked like a hotel balcony, holding a drink. She was smiling at him. This wasn't some office flirtation that spiraled. He'd known her before the internship. He brought her into his company. He hired her. Lied about how they met. I opened up my email and sent every screenshot, every picture, every message, and the next few days were a blur. I didn't eat much. Didn't sleep more than a few hours at a time. I started each morning by staring at the ceiling, wondering what version of Daniel I had been living with all these years. Every little memory, vacations, anniversaries, birthdays, felt fake. Tainted. Like I was remembering someone else's life. The lawyer prepped me for what was coming. We had the documentation to push for divorce, and even more leverage to file for misconduct through his firm's ethics committee. Apparently, bringing in someone you're sleeping with, then lying about it to HR, breaks a few dozen policies. But I needed something more than paperwork. I needed to say what I needed to say, face to face. So I invited him over. One last conversation. My sister didn't want me to. She called it a trap. But I needed it. Not for him. For me. He showed up with red eyes, unshaven, in a hoodie and jeans like he was trying to seem human again. Like dressing down would make him look less like the man who destroyed everything. He stood in my sister's hallway and said, "Thank you for letting me come." "I didn't do it for you," I said. "I did it for me." We sat in the living room, not touching, not looking at each other. He started with an apology. A long one. The kind that feels rehearsed, like he wrote it in his head 1,000 times. "I ruined everything. I was selfish. I took you for granted. I kept thinking I could have both lives. I was so damn stupid." I let him talk. He told me he had a problem. That he'd been cheating on and off for years. That it started when his father got sick. That something in him snapped. That he chased validation, control, power, whatever it was, he couldn't stop. Every affair made him feel alive, and then guilty, and then numb. And then he'd do it again. Then he said something that made my stomach turn. Sophia was different. I didn't mean for her to be, but she was. She listened to me. She looked at me like I mattered. I exploded. I looked at you like you mattered. For 15 goddamn years. I stood next to you when you were nothing. When you lost jobs, when you had breakdowns, when you didn't know who you were. I held your hand through it all. And you threw me away for some girl with a fake smile and student loans? He looked away. You didn't want love, Daniel. You wanted an audience. He didn't argue. I went to the table, pulled out the manila folder. Same one I took to his boardroom. But this time it was packed thicker. More screenshots. Hotel records. Marissa's statement. Photos from the iPad. I handed it to him. He flipped through in silence. Page after page. I watched his face drop with every turn. You brought Sophia into your own company. You lied to HR, lied to your team. If she's pregnant, you're finished. You're already suspended. That's just the start. He tried to defend himself. She hasn't confirmed anything yet. I don't even know if it's true. Do you want it to be true? No, he whispered. I want to go back. I stood up. There is no going back. And then the doorbell rang. I froze. My sister wasn't expecting anyone. I walked to the door and opened it, and there she was. Sophia. She looked terrified. Pale. No makeup. Dressed down in jeans and a sweater. She clutched her phone in her hand like it was a weapon. I'm sorry, she said. I know I shouldn't be here, but I didn't know where else to go. Daniel stood up behind me. Sophia, what are you doing? She ignored him. She looked straight at me. I'm not pregnant, she said. I lied. I thought maybe if I said that, he'd choose me. That he'd stop pretending this was just a fling. I blinked. I'm sorry, Olivia. I know I've ruined everything. I was naive. But he promised me things. He made me feel like I mattered. Then he ghosted me. He wouldn't even talk to me after the HR fallout. Daniel tried to interrupt. Sophia, that's not, she turned on him. Shut up, Daniel. You told me she didn't care about you. That she cheated first. That she was cold and distant. That you were stuck with her. You lied to both of us. The room was silent. Then she started crying. I just wanted to believe someone could love me, she said, voice cracking. And you used that. Daniel looked like a broken man. Not guilty. Not sorry. Just hollow. I walked over, picked up the manila folder, and handed it to Sophia. Use this, I said. For your case. For the ethics report. For whatever you want. He didn't just lie to me, he manipulated you. I'm sorry for that. I really am. She nodded, still crying. She left without another word. Daniel stood there, swaying like he'd been punched. I picked up the envelope from the side table. These are divorce papers, I said. They'll be filed this week. He didn't fight it. He didn't say a word. He just sat down, hunched over, and started crying. Not loud. Not performative. Just quiet, defeated sobs. I didn't comfort him. I left him there, took a walk around the block, and let the cold air sting my skin. The firm officially terminated him 2 weeks later. Sophia filed a formal ethics complaint, and I gave a supporting statement. HR swept through his department like a tornado. They restructured the team. People whispered. Some reached out to me to say they were sorry. Others stayed silent. Daniel moved out of our house. I stayed with my sister for another month, then moved into a small one-bedroom in West Loop. Nothing fancy. Just mine. He tried texting. Once. Just a picture of us on a beach from 3 years ago. I didn't reply. I needed to heal. Now it's been 6 months. The divorce is final. I kept the house, sold it, and used the money to start fresh. Therapy helped. Friends helped. My sister was my rock. Sometimes I still wake up and expect to see him next to me. Sometimes I forget for a second and then remember all over again. It still hurts. But the pain isn't sharp anymore. It's dull. Manageable. The betrayal broke something in me, but it also built something new. A version of myself that doesn't settle for crumbs. That asks harder questions. That doesn't ignore red flags just because the person waving them also brings you coffee. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust again. But I do know I survived. And I walked away with my head high. Daniel? I don't know where he is. And I don't really care. Some wounds never heal. But scars? Scars remind you that you lived through it. And I did.